We've been told that evil wears a mask. But what if the real evil is pretending that the mask doesn't exist at all? What if the greatest manipulation is not done by monsters, but by those who smile and speak of virtue while hiding daggers in their hearts? We call someone Machiavellian as if that ends the conversation, as if the word itself means corruption, coldness, a hunger for control. But do you even know the man? Do you know who Niccolò Machiavelli truly was? Or are you just repeating what someone else once told you, someone who was too afraid to confront the raw truth? Because Machiavelli did something no one dared to do, he opened the door to power, peeled back the illusions, and showed us what it really looks like when people fight to survive. He didn't speak to kings to make them more dangerous. He spoke to us, to show us how power already works in silence, how fear controls men long before swords are drawn, how love is fragile and fleeting, but fear has roots, deep roots. And still, they called him wicked. Still, they twisted his words. Because no one wants the truth naked. We want it dressed in poetry. We want morality in fairy tales, not in war rooms. But Machiavelli was a man surrounded by war, betrayal, executions, exile. He saw friends tortured. He was tortured. He saw political alliances change faster than the weather. One day you're in power, the next you're swinging from a rope in the town square. He saw how idealism gets crushed by realism. He didn't imagine darkness, he lived in it. And yet, he did not become a tyrant. He became a mirror. He said, if this is the world we live in, at least let us understand it honestly. At least let us not walk blindfolded into the fire. People accused him of encouraging cruelty, but they missed the point. He wasn't encouraging it. He was decoding it. He said, this is what works. This is what wins. Now, decide what you're willing to become. He gave you the map, not the destination. But the truth is, most people don't want to think. They want heroes, they want villains, they want labels, not questions, and so they called him a villain. Easier that way, simpler, safer. Because if Machiavelli was telling the truth, then everything you believe about goodness, about justice, about leadership, it all starts to crack. And maybe that's why they buried him in words he never said. Maybe that's why his book, The Prince, was feared more than it was understood. People read it like a spell book, like a formula for cruelty. But what they missed is that he was laughing, crying, bleeding between the lines. He was saying, He never told you to betray your conscience. He told you to be aware of how the world betrays you. And yet, he was cast out, betrayed by his own city, exiled, alone. After years of loyal service, after risking his life to preserve peace, they tortured him, accused him without evidence, left him to rot. And still, he didn't seek revenge. He wrote. He wrote The Prince not as a throne grabber, but as a broken man, trying to offer something to the world, anything to make sense of the madness he had seen. And, in those pages, he said something that terrifies people to this day. Men forget more easily the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. A sentence that cuts like a knife because it's not false. It's uncomfortable. It's true. And we hate truth when it shows us our reflection without makeup. But if you really read his letters, his plays, his personal notes, you'll find a different man. A man who loved music, who laughed, who longed for stability. A man who believed in republican values, not dictatorship. A man who saw the beauty in human potential, even while watching that potential be crushed under boots of power. This was not a monster. This was a man who had the courage to describe the world as it was, not as we wish it to be. And that kind of truth is dangerous. That kind of voice makes people uncomfortable because it doesn't let you hide. It doesn't let you say, "I didn't know." It tells you, "You do know. Now, what will you do with it?" Machiavelli understood that people crave comfort, not clarity. We romanticize leadership. We pretend good intentions are enough. But Machiavelli knew intentions are useless if you don't understand consequence. He wrote about fear not because he loved it, but because he watched it work. Over and over again. He said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." And people hate that line. They say it's evil. But look around you. How many people respect kindness without power behind it? How often does the world reward mercy over strength? Do people truly love those who are weak, or do they forget them the moment something louder comes along? This is not just about Machiavelli. This is about you. This is about whether you want to see things as they are or keep living in illusions. It's about whether you'll let your mind be owned by fairy tales, or if you'll dare to understand the brutal, unfiltered nature of reality. Because once you see the world through and still, centuries later, people speak his name with contempt, as if Machiavelli built a machine of evil instead of a mirror for mankind. But the deeper you go into his mind, the more you realize he wasn't creating monsters, he was describing them. He wasn't inventing cruelty, he was documenting it. He wasn't telling you how to destroy others, he was warning you how others might try to destroy you. But that's the problem with the truth. It's not poetic, it's not polite, it's not easy to digest. It burns the ego, it breaks the illusion. And so the world rejects it, and rejects the one who dares to speak it. What most people don't realize is that The Prince was never meant for ordinary people. It was written in a tone that mimicked the brutal language of the ruling elite. It wasn't a moral lesson, it was a survival guide written in the language of predators, because Machiavelli knew, if you speak softly in a world of swords, no one hears you. So he wrote in steel, but deep down he was laughing at them. He showed them a version of themselves, so raw, so ruthless, that it could only be true, and that scared them, because if he could see them so clearly, it meant they were no longer safe behind their illusions. Even more disturbing is how relevant his words are today. Turn on the news, look at politics, look at corporations, look at influencers, spiritual leaders, false prophets, social media algorithms. What do you see? Manipulation disguised as morality, power disguised as progress, greed disguised as generosity, and the masses still asleep, still choosing comforting lies over uncomfortable truths. But Machiavelli tried to wake us up centuries ago. He told us appearances are everything because people are not logical, they are emotional. They follow what looks good, not what is good. And if you don't understand that, you become a victim of those who do. He once said, "The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar." It sounds harsh, brutal, arrogant even, but is it false? Or is it just a truth that no one else dared to speak aloud, because we don't want to admit how easily we're fooled by charm? We don't want to admit how quickly we bow before confidence, even if it's built on lies. And so we pretend we're free, even as we follow the strongest voice in the room. But Machiavelli never wanted us to be blind followers. He wanted us to become thinkers, strategists, people who observe before they obey, people who listen with awareness, not just hope. That's why his real legacy isn't manipulation, it's awareness. He taught us that intentions are useless without understanding, that morality without strategy is weakness, that love without... If you don't prepare, if you don't understand human nature, someone else will, and they will use your goodness as a weapon against you. In today's world, we call it being too nice, being used, being taken for granted. But Machiavelli saw it 500 years ago and warned us. And yet, people still fear his name. But here's the real twist, the most Machiavellian thing of all. Niccolò Machiavelli, the man they called ruthless, was actually a deep believer in freedom. He loved republicanism, not dictatorship. He wanted Florence to be ruled not by one tyrant, but by the people. His book, Discourses on Livy, shows this side of him, a man who valued liberty, collective power, civic virtue. But no one talks about that. Why? Because it doesn't fit the convenient label. It doesn't serve the narrative that power holders wanted to sell you. They turned him into a devil so they could keep doing the devil's work and blame it on someone else. But if you, the listener, truly want to see the world clearly, you must look beyond the quotes, the textbooks, the rumors. You must meet the man behind the mask, a man who loved deeply, suffered quietly, and wrote truthfully. A man whose mind was sharp like a sword, but whose heart, wounded as it was, still beat for truth. That's the irony of Machiavelli. He described monsters, but he was not one. He wrote about darkness, but not out of love for it, out of fear that you might not recognize it when it stood in front of you smiling. So next time someone uses the word Machiavellian as an insult, pause. Think. Ask yourself, are they reacting to his cruelty, or are they afraid of the mirror he holds up to their soul? Because if truth is a weapon, Machiavelli's was the sharpest, and the most dangerous truths are the ones that sound like warnings, but feel like prophecies. He died in 1527, poor and largely forgotten. No monument, no grand applause, just silence. But his words, his ideas, they survived, not because of how he made people feel, but because of how he made people think. And that, my friend, is real immortality. In the end, Machiavelli didn't corrupt the world. The world was already corrupt. He just pointed at it and said, "Look, this is what you are." And for that, they hated him. But maybe, just maybe, that's why you're here now. Not because you're looking for comfort, but because you're ready to open your eyes.